Is this an intro video? Should I do an intro video? Probably. Well, it is January 16th, and my Christmas tree is still up. This beautiful tree has been up since mid-November. I think it's probably time to take it down. And I need to declutter my space. And I got too much stuff in this lovely little house of mine, and I need to declutter.
I really like to start the year by decluttering. My brother and sister-in-law call it emptying the cup, and I've always loved that visual. If your cup is full to the brim, then there's no room for more good stuff. And I wanted to start this year by making space for all the good things I want to bring into my life in 2025. Of course, once you empty the cup and you wonder about how to fill it, the existential dread of the new year begins. And then questions start to creep in like, why am I here?
That question a lot of the time makes me feel really anxious and unsure of myself, like I haven't figured anything out at this point in my life. Like I don't have answers to that question.
That isn't entirely true. I do actually have some answers to the dreadful questions, but instead of why, I recently started to ask myself what. What do I want? What do I need? What lights me up? What am I doing to create the life I want to live? Usually when I'm feeling this way, it helps me to look at where I've been because there are breadcrumbs in my past that can lead me toward the future I want. I feel especially grateful that there was a good chunk of my life that was not on the internet because I have physical, tangible things to look back on. So I decided to take a trip down memory lane and look through some old scrapbooks. Sports were my main focus when I was a kid. I played a sport for every season. Basketball in winter, softball in the summer, field hockey in the fall, and soccer in the spring. I loved playing sports. But I also loved art, like working on craft projects and painting my bedroom, creating the space I wanted to be in. When I was 12, my mom gave me her old Minolta film camera, and I started taking photos. My schedule was already stretched thin between the in-season sport and playing trombone in band and jazz band, but I was able to take some art and acting classes in high school, and I felt such a strong pull towards all types of creative expression. So my singular goal at the time of being an Olympic field hockey player slowly started to diverge, even before I went to college. But sports were everything to me at the time, so I didn't know how to split my interests. My main reason for going to college was to play field hockey. The education part of it came second, but I'm really glad I decided to major in art because after 2 years of playing field hockey at a Division I school and trying out for the national team twice and not making it either time, I was tired. After injuring my back from lifting weights, I was done.
And I remember my breaking point. It was my sophomore year after the season, and I was sitting on my living room floor of my childhood home just sobbing to my mom about how unhappy I was.
So I made a change. I transferred schools, was able to live close to my brother, and focused on my art education. I learned how to bind books, learned more about photography, and I got the opportunity to study abroad in Italy. My world just exploded. No longer were my days full of conditioning or early morning weightlifting, no more scrimmages or traveling to away games. What I had known for most of my life had completely shifted, and I felt like my world was expanding in exponential ways. I moved to New York City after I graduated, and my world continued to expand. I got into a 2-year acting program, worked in a creative retail store for a while, and then slowly lost my footing before stumbling completely and leaving New York after being there for 6 years. I couldn't quite figure out how to make it work, and New York had worn me out. The opportunity to move to an island in the Caribbean came up, and while I scoffed at the idea initially, I eventually said yes. You only live once, right? When would an opportunity come up like this again? I asked myself. Little did I know how much that decision would impact my life. The best thing to come out of St. Thomas? This guy.
Brooklyn. Beautiful. Beautiful boy.
The worst thing? Crippling self-doubt about who I was. JK, JK, JK. My point being is that I kind of lost my way in my 20s. After St. Thomas, I bounced around for years, working in restaurants and the wine industry, not quite sure where I belonged. I was called an old soul when I was younger, and I thought that meant that I was wise, that I would somehow have things figured out at an early age. Of course, that's not how things worked out. Plus, I'm a bit of a hopeless romantic, and sometimes I get swept up in the moment and don't ask some good know before you go questions. That can mean it'll be spontaneous and great, but it can also mean that it'll be unsustainable and heartbreaking.
Sometimes it just takes a while to find our footing.
But asking those what questions have really helped me get back to the things I loved as a kid. The one I kept coming back to was what brings me joy. Over the years, I've noticed that the creative things I used to love as a kid and young adult are the things I keep coming back to when I feel lost. I picked up some things that had been dormant for a long time, like movement, journaling, bookbinding, working in a sketchbook. I upgraded my 16-year-old DSLR camera to a new mirrorless one. I pulled out my old Holga and Pentax cameras, got some new art supplies, started to learn how to play the mandolin, an instrument whose sound I've always loved. Getting back to the things that used to light me up, but just fell away as my focus and energy shifted towards other things. Even if we feel called to something when we're younger, we don't always follow our intuition. We gaslight ourselves. We try to make ourselves fit into boxes that we'll never fit in.
This is one of the reasons why I wanted to start this channel, to combine all of the ways I love to make art and share it, and hopefully encourage you to find what lights you up. Even if you haven't found it yet, or if you have found it, I'm hoping that by sharing my story and the projects that I'll be making here every week, that you are encouraged to just make art, no matter how old you are, because the world needs artists now more than ever.